Welcome to another presentation of Lean Frontiers Audio. The following presentation was recorded at the 2013 TWI Summit. For more information on the TWI Summit, please visit www.twisummit.com. And now, on with the audio.
Please join me in welcoming Mr. Imai to open the 2013 TWI Summit.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great privilege and honor for me to be here today. And it is said that when a typical American businessman makes a presentation, he typically starts with a joke. But it's also said that when a typical Japanese businessman makes a presentation, he starts out with an apology, saying such things like, no, I'm not so qualified to speak on the subject, so I feel very ashamed. Oh, I'm sorry coming late to the meeting. But as a Japanese, I would like to apologize for not making a joke. But I truly think that biggest joke for any companies in the whole world today is the fact that in spite of so many books and testimonials and proofs have been written and said about the merit of Toyota production system, lean production, and this and that, and also with all those experts who have been actively promoting it, including many of your people, in my estimate, there has been only less than 1% of all the companies in the whole world have, embraced Toyota approach, or I may call it a lean approach as a universal language. Far less than 1% of all the companies has so far embraced the lean approach in the true way and are enjoying its full benefit. And why is it? And it has been a nagging, worry for myself and frustration. So I'm now writing on my third Kaizen book, in which I try to, find out the root cause, the reasons why it is so. So anyway, that whole subject, in my word, the Kaizen to going to lean and then to green, to protect the precious resources on Earth. This, I believe, is one of the most urgent tasks for anybody, any organization. And TWI is a starting point, to make a successful journey towards that direction. And then again, the big question is, why is it that it has not been successful? There are so very few people. So I would like to start out talking about Kaizen and Lean, and then Kaizen Lean also automatically leads to green, and then coming back to the TWI, and what could be the role of TWI? Okay. So, to my way of thinking, today there are only two types of organizations. One is what I call traditional companies, and the other is, the lean company. And traditional company are the ones which employs maximum resources for the minimum output. That's my definition. And typical example is General Motors. And the lean company employs minimum resources for the maximum output. Good example is Toyota Motor Company. And this simple definition, I think, explains that why the lean company is far more advantageous, competitive and successful than the traditional companies. Well, if you are employing minimum resources, naturally your cost of operation will be minimized. Also, employing minimum resources simply means that you are having minimum mistakes. One simple definition of quality is that the variability control. Variability control is one of the best ways to improve quality. So if to do the same work, if you employed far more number of people than the other ones, the more number of people are making more mistakes. So naturally, this simple definition means that traditional approach is far inferior than the lean approach. And yet, as I said, my frustration has been, why is it there are so few companies that have failed to embrace it? So, let me compare some major differences between the two. In the traditional companies, particularly the CEOs of the company believes in the shareholder value, improving the value of the shares. In the lean company, customer satisfaction comes first. When Akio Toyoda, the president of Toyota, was named as the next president some 3-4 years ago, he had his first interview with the press. And on that occasion, he said, I want to be remembered as a president of a company who believes that his most precious place is Gemba. Gemba means shop floor, production floors. But Gemba also means in Japan, where the key operations are going on, operational activities are going on. That is to say, not only on the production floors, sales floors, customers, and the overseas offices. For the president, there are many precious Gemba. But he said, I want to be remembered, as a man who takes much care of the Gemba. Whereas in most Western companies or traditional companies, top management think about shareholder values. How can we improve the share prices? You seldom hear them talking about customers. And their attention is financial. Whereas in in lean companies, it's operational. Then focus is mostly design and sales. Over here, Gemba, shop floor. Time span, very much short term. You try to come up with fascinating result in the short time, regardless of what happens to the future of the company. Over here, it's a long term. Now, how do they regard their employees? In traditional, people are the costs. Cost to be, reduced. Over here, employees are the assets, precious assets. And cost reduction, in trying to reduce the cost, traditional approach is cost cutting. Cut out, any cost that you have. Don't really worry about the aftermath of what kind of negative, outcome may be coming. Over here, it's not cutting, but cost management. You try to manage overall cost of operations. like shortening the total lead time, employing the minimum number of people, reducing the inventory level to the minimum. And as a result of making all those operational improvements, you try to manage the overall cost. And management believes that today's customer, wants always better quality product at a lower price. Therefore, between quality and the cost, in the traditional company, because they don't have any such means, they think, well, cost improvement, cost reduction and quality improvement cannot be achieved overnight. So, if we want to improve quality, we have to put in more money, hire more people. While among the lean company, management believes that because that is customer wants, we have to realize improving on the quality at the same time reducing the cost. And they believe that it is possible. It can be done. And in terms of the business scale, typically, the bigger and the faster we make, then it's better. Because traditional production system is based on mass production and fast production by using the fast-moving machines, churning out, the pieces just as soon as possible, so that you can reduce the minimum cost. And for that purpose, the bigger the better, the faster the better. Whereas in the lean approach, they have a different mentality. Adequate size is okay. No matter how large you are or how medium size or how small, it doesn't matter. If you introduce good management system, regardless of the size of your company, you could always, make enough profit margin. Volume. Well, with regard to the inventory levels, traditional company, uses employees' inventories. If not welcome, but at least, it believes that inventory is a necessary evil. And inventory is a starting point of meeting customer requirement. In the lean company, inventory, should be regarded as the arch enemy of your family, who may have killed your great grandfather. Inventory is vice, evil, and the best solution is to have no inventory. And corresponding to change. Well, here is the difference, I think most important difference between the two companies. In the traditional, they have no flexibility to meet market diversity. Life is constantly changing. You never know when, the long period of prosperity suddenly goes down and now run into the recession. And you're not making the same type of product in the same way, in the same volume. No. There's a constant change. And your facilities are limited. But customer orders come in many different forms. And yet you have to meet these ups and downs of the orders. And in order to meet that, the lean approach is the only one that can meet with these changing market conditions. In the traditional way, it is very fixed. You are fixed in terms of the number of employees whom you have just hired, as many as you can at the time of prosperity. And so many machines that you have bought, such a long, real-time production, and inventory everywhere. How can you make a switch over to the changing circumstances? So this particular area is one of the biggest difference, between the two type of companies. So let me talk about something about the Kaizen. So, Kai means to change, Zen means being good or better. So together, Kaizen means continual improvement. But I'm not happy with this translation of continual improvement, because some people might say that, I know what continuous improvement. In our company 6 months ago, we introduced the Six Sigma, and we have made some improvement. Now it is ended, and now we are taking breaks. And then after 6 months, we may start out again. So I know we are doing Kaizen, but that's not Kaizen. So my new definition of Kaizen is, number one, it is everyday improvement. Everyday improvement. When you realize that it's something that you got to do every day, well, your mindset, completely changes. I'm sure that among many of your companies, you have tried or you have been trying to introduce so-called 5S. 5S? Please raise your hands if you have been introducing 5S within your company. Thank you. If you are doing it within your own company every day, and if management is making sure that it is being continued every day, and somebody also check every day to see whether it is going on or not, please raise your hand again. What happened? Well, Kaizen requires that kind of mindset. It doesn't happen just like that. It requires continuous determination to keep on doing it day in, day after. Toyota has been doing it, for generations. Ever since Toyota started it, let's say in the middle of the last century, they have been doing it even to this day. So if it is a daily event, eventually it also means that it is a long-term event. It's a long-term event without a break. Then everybody improvement, it should involve everybody. Also everywhere. That is to say, not only on the shop floors, but it should involve in all the other management functions. For instance, within any companies, of course, there are many functions, functional, setup. You have R&D, design, production, sales, marketing, purchasing, personnel, and what have you, accounting, financial. But particularly from the standpoint of the production management, there are the three key functions exist. One is designing function, then making function, which we call Gemba, shop floor, making function. Third is selling function. So, but in many cases, when we are talking about lean or just in time or Toyota production system, people really tend to think that, it's a production. Those areas, where they are making products. But this has to be really, involving everybody within the organization. It's a total management system we are talking about. Nobody is spared. And it should start out from the top management. When you are introducing 5S, do you look into the CEO's office to see what the kind of situation it is? And when you are introducing, the lean, what does the CEO do? I have a friend of mine who used to work for the Nissan Motor Company, and he was director in charge of the machining department. And after he retired, he joined one of the major suppliers to Nissan and became the general manager of their biggest manufacturing plant. And he wanted to introduce the TPM, total productive maintenance. So he selected the dirtiest machine in the whole plant, and every morning he woke up earlier than anybody else, and he went to that machine and started cleaning up. After lunch, he went there to cleaning up. After work, he went back there again. Typically, whenever we start introducing such thing as total quality control, total productive maintenance, the initiative is usually taken by top management. So he wanted to show a good example. So he started out cleaning this machine. And initially, everybody was laughing, and so the most expensive guy is cleaning a machine, the janitor's job, laughing at him. But he kept on cleaning it, and very soon people began to see that, he's trying to start out something, serious. And in those days, he told me that he kept cleaning this machine so many times. And he said he was touching his machine so very often that touching machine more often than he touched his wife. And he developed so much affection for the machine eventually. So he could become very sensitive to any small changes taking place in the machine. That's a Japanese top management, the commitment to the job. So it should start from the top. And these are the 10 list of Kaizens, reminders. Discard conventional fixed idea for operations. Think of how to do it and not why it cannot be done. Do not make excuses. Start by questioning current practices. Do not seek perfection. Do it right away, even if for only 50% of target. Correct mistake at once. Do not spend money for Kaizen. One of the key things about Kaizen is that it doesn't require to spend any money. Majority of the problem can be solved, using your common sense. Wisdom is brought out when faced with hardships. Ask why 5 times and seek root causes. Seek the wisdom of 10 people rather than the knowledge of one. Kaizen ideas are infinite. Sometimes people say, well, we have done so many Kaizen. Very soon we'll be out of Kaizen. I say, don't worry. Every time you do Kaizen, you begin to see 10 more opportunities for Kaizen. There are no end. The only time when you have no more opportunities is when you have become a god. And this is the way you look upon everybody's job every day. One half of everybody's job is maintenance. Maintenance means, to maintain the same type of job that you have been doing until yesterday. And maintenance means to follow the existing standards. And by standards, I mean, what you are supposed to do in your job, which is written down on a piece of paper and displayed. That's standard. So one half of everybody's job is to follow standards. This is particularly the case for the operators on the shop floor. Then, if you can think of some improvement opportunity, or if you are troubled with some kind of problems, then you have to solve it. And so, first, the first step is to follow the existing standards. The second step is to make improvement, and as soon as you make improvement, what you have to do, first of all, is to revise the standards, revise the existing standards. And if you make some improvement and start doing it without revising the standards, we don't call it improvement. We call it deviation. Then, so one half of is improvement, maintenance, and the other half is improvement. Oops. However, if you look at this improvement portion, you find that there are two portions. One is Kaizen. As I said, it's improvement that doesn't cost you any money. The other is innovation. That requires lots of money to invest, buying state-of-the-art machines, new technologies, and so on. And Japanese companies, many companies have thrived, from thrived, from utilizing the Kaizen without spending much money. One of our Kaizen consultants was visiting a German factory. They are making aluminum foils, and they had a huge printing factory where they are printing the names for the foil to make like a Coca-Cola or Pepsi beer can. And my friend, this particular consultant, was going through the plant together with the general manager of the plant, and the general manager said that, well, we are expecting to have a big increase in orders coming very soon, so I have decided to place 3 more units. So our consultant said, but look, these machines are so large and expensive. How much are they? And his answer was 750,000 euros. So that's a hell of a money. But maybe you can tell me what's the ratio of what's the utilization of these machines? Within the TPM, they have what they call, the utilization ratio, OEE, overall equipment effectiveness. And so, what's the percentage of these machines that are working? That was his question. So, what do you think that his answer was? I hope you didn't hear him. Well, because usually what happens is, 20%, 50%, 80%, then I have my joy to tell him, well, you are all wrong. Because the answer was, I don't know. I don't know. This is a very serious matter, don't you think? Here is a manager who is prepared to make investment, such an amount of money, and doesn't even know the real data. So we say, every time you want to buy more machines, that's the best time to do Kaizen. Every time you want to hire more people, that's the best time to do Kaizen. Kaizen opportunities are everywhere. And now I want to talk about Gemba. So as I said, Gemba is literally shop floor. And I also said that in a typical lean situation, top management has much more interest in Gemba, shop floor, what goes on shop floor. But in a typical traditional company, management doesn't care so much about Gemba. They think that Gemba is a place where things always go wrong. And that's a place, for no good manager to go down. So this is the typical perception of Gemba in Japan. First, Gemba is placed on top of the organization. They are engaged in precious, important things to satisfy the customers. And here is the organization to support. Here is the senior management, top management, middle managers, staff people, and supervisors. And what are these guys' jobs? Their job is to support Gemba, to remove any constraint that these people are having. But unfortunately, this is not the perception in many companies. And actually, Gemba is a very important link. Any organization has three major functions without which they don't survive. That is the design function, designing product, and Gemba function, or the making function, that is production, and selling function, design, make, and sell. And usually, Kaizen activities start from Gemba, because that is the vital link between the design and the sale. But it doesn't mean that, of course, the design and the selling function should not be involved. They are very closely related. So we need to think about these activities, as a flow. So, Gemba is often regarded as the most precious place. And we have 5 Gemba principles. Number 1, when an abnormality occurs, go to Gemba first. And go to Gemba and have a good look. I think you are all familiar with Detective Colombo. And when we say Gemba, it has a connotation that it is a place where very important things are happening. Gemba is a place where important things are happening. If the traffic police says that, on the highway, there was a big accident, And the Gemba was on 38th Street. That means where it happened was 38th Street. That is Gemba, the place where it happened. And so, whenever the manslaughter happens, like Detective Colombo, in his case, what is the first place he goes when the new story, unveils itself? Of course, she goes to Gemba right away. Yes? Goes to Gemba. Have you ever seen Colombo sitting behind his desk? Do you know if he has a desk? Well, he's always running from Gemba to Gemba. And starting point is, Gemba, that is where the body lies. Because we say, Gemba carries most important information right there. That is his starting point. He will never be waiting, in front of his desk, waiting for the report to come. No. So I would say Colombo is acting like a typical, very good Japanese manager. The moment he hears the story, he just rushes to Gemba. Because if he's sitting behind the desk and wait for the information to arrive, that is what I call fabricated information. It was seen by somebody else. In such a person's understanding, he wrote down and sent it to you. It is already fabricated. So we say, if you want to see something, go down to Gemba right away and have a good look. Then you are right in the midst of the reality. You don't need any fishbone chart, Pareto chart. Everything you see is the reality. Keep asking why 5 times. And then chances are that you'll find out the root cause. Then we say check with Genbutsu. Genbutsu is real tangible things. If you have produced some rejects, have a good look at it, smell it, taste it, and if you still can't see it, find it, go home with it and sleep with it. Then you have much better feel about it. Then take temporary countermeasure on the spot. Then remove root cause. In this process, keep asking why, and then standardize to prevent the same problem from happening. This is a very important step. And Toyota has developed the Toyota production system by simply following all these 5 steps. That's all. Every time they have encountered the problem, they go to Gemba, have a good look, and came up with a solution, standardized it, and started from there. And this is the 5 Gemba principles. So, on the shop floors, we have, of course, we are in the business of in the business of in the business of making a profit. And we realize quality, cost, and delivery. That's our target. And we must employ our people, information, equipment, and products and materials. Then what we need to do in Gemba, now we are coming close to the, today's major subject. One is standardization, and 5S, good housekeeping, and muda elimination. Muda is anything that doesn't add value. And these are the three major activities that be carried out on the shop floors. And then, in carrying out those activities, teamwork is generated, morale enhancement is advanced, and people are engaged in suggestions, and QC circles and various teamwork is conducted, and self-discipline is promoted. All these things will happen in the course of introducing these activities. And so you might say in a simple statement, these are the areas TWI activities are taking place. And of course, in Japan, ever since, we have added many additional requirements. And I'd like to talk about it at the end of my presentation. Another important thing I would like to add is that Gemba deteriorates. Gemba is destined to deteriorate. While you are here today, at this very moment, whatever your Gemba is, everything is deteriorating. Have you ever thought about it? Every minute, things are deteriorating. That is a rule of entropy. Entropy. And therefore, for that reason, you have to establish standards for every operator. And the only way that, Gemba doesn't deteriorate is for management, to establish standards and to make certain that standards are being followed. When I'm visiting many factories, I'm not sure if, whether the management knows what their job is. Oftentimes I have a feeling that the management doesn't care what goes in Gemba. I see no management will to maintain at least the minimum level of performance, no matter how badly managed it is. But they don't even have such a sense of maintaining the current status. So, one of the most important role of the management is to maintain and improve standards. And if you don't have standards, of course, nothing else, you can do will matter. Then I don't have time to go into too much details, but Taicho Ono mentioned 7 types of Muda that you can find on the shop floors. And of course, he said Muda of overproduction is the worst type of Muda. Then, if I only mentioned one Muda, is the Muda of inventory. Muda of inventory. Oops. Muda of inventory. And of course, inventory means that the materials sit still in between the processes and collecting dust and doesn't move. And, the accumulating cost. So nothing good happens on the inventory. It never improves automatically in quality. So, there are only 2 things that improves in quality while in inventory. One is a Scotch whiskey, and the other is red wine. But if you are not in the business of making whiskey or red wine, you should never think that inventory is a good thing. And yet, I know some plant managers who tells me, I can't sleep at night if we don't have good inventory in the plant. What does that mean? And 5S. 5S simply means good housekeeping. And as you can see, these are the 5 Japanese words which start with S. And you see some English translations. But it simply means good housekeeping. And the goal of 5S is to make shortest flow. Later on, I'm going to talk about the importance of the flow in the lean production system. Flow is the center of the lean production. And in order to become lean, the first thing you have to do is 5S. If you don't do good enough 5S, it's no use. Even if you say, yes, we are doing 5S, well, if it doesn't help you to shorten the total production lead time, then you cannot really gain its full benefit. So 5S is all important. Those who are engaged in the TWI maybe think 5S is something different, which has been concocted from lean approach. But no, this should be the very starting point of the 5S. I mean, of the TWI type of activities. Without 5S, you are going nowhere. So, I was talking about the traditional and lean, and between the two systems, the biggest difference is whether you have this concept of flow or not. So, for instance, if I go to visit some companies which has not yet embraced lean, I go through the production floors. The flow is disrupted everywhere. Disrupted, stagnated. People are standing by, or people are walking around, merely walking around. And there's a very separated batch, which we call isolated islands. There's no flow. There's zigzag, flow. And that is the very easiest way to identify the lack of flow. And that is the easiest way to identify between the two systems. Then what are the conditions of making a flow? Again, look at the 5S. If you don't have 5S, naturally you can't make a flow. If what the operator is working and what he needs is out here, he has to come out here, pick it, come over here. There's no flow. Unless this material are right here, then you pick it up, put it, and then send it to the next process in one piece flow. So, the 5S is the starting point. Then standardization. It's every activity is standardized. Visual management. Well, you must be able to see everything by visual means, whether the pace of work is regularly going on, or whether there are any disturbances. And muda elimination. Muda is anything that does not add value. On the shop floor, there are only two types of activities. You are either engaged in value-adding job, or no value, or no value-adding activities. And value-adding activities means that whatever you are doing, the customer is paying for what you do. Whatever you are doing something, if customer is not paying, if you are carrying something, working from plant to plant, nobody is paying you for your work. So that's muda. So it's a very easy visual management to see what you are doing, whether you are engaged in value adding or not. So you have to eliminate that kind of activities. And up to this point, again, the new additions to the TWI that have been developed over years in Japan. And then reorganizing management structure. When we start introducing the flow management and eliminating those stagnations in between processes, then for each product line, the total flow can go through all the way from the beginning till the end. Then you only need to have one manager in charge of the total flow. But in the traditional way, at each process you have line manager, and each manager is instructed how many you are supposed to make today. When you are finished, take it over there. And you have many intervening managers. And the communication is very complicated. But when you start introducing flow, chances are that one manager can take care of the total flow, because all you need is to look at the flow. And that's the best way to realize the minimum cost. So to making the flow is, let's see. Yeah, I told reorganizing management structure and building Kaizen culture. In other words, everybody, must participate, and, because by the time you come to this level, everybody should have engaged in hundreds of various Kaizen activities. Then, after making a flow, the next thing you need is, what we call synchronization. That is to say, adopt the same takt time. Because, if you have 100 processes, and if one of the process requires twice as many takt time, of course, then all the other process has to be drawn by that takt time. But if all the processes, have the identical takt time, then you can just make it longer or shorter depending on the requirement. So again, after making a flow, synchronization becomes a very important subject. Then I already mentioned the importance between, the relationship between design, production, logistics, and sales. And I also mentioned that this flexibility to produce, according to the market change, and has been the biggest advantage of the lean production system. Only a couple of days ago, you have read in the newspaper, Toyota is now back to normalcy. Toyota is on their way to keep on, following the same path that they have been doing. Because they have had this flexibility to cope with all those changes. Big typhoon and the nuclear, station troubles, and of course they went through very difficult quality issues, but they have completely recovered. Now they are on their way to make far more profit from now on. And it could be attributed to many other factors. Maybe, of course, the Japanese yen, the exchange rate, yen has become cheaper. And there are many other reasons. But the fundamental reason was I would say, is their success in building such a lean system, which can cope with these ups and downs of the market. So, I know that today many companies are trying to introduce, like TWI, Six Sigma, re-engineering. Now, I must ask the question, why are you introducing it? What is what's the real, goal, ultimate goal that you want to accomplish? And I think, if any company trying to start on a journey, and if they don't know where they want to go, it's like Christopher Columbus School of Management. Because when he set out, he didn't know where he was going. When he got there, he didn't know where he was. And when he returned, he didn't know where he had been. And he did it all by borrowed money. So that's Christopher Columbus School of Management. So where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? Do you want to teach TWI? Is that what you want to do? Or do you want to help the company to become totally lean? TWI is the starting point of becoming lean. And you have to look at this total picture, and then look at what you are going to do. So this flow concept, I believe, is one of the most important things for you to understand lean. Taicho Ono said, let the flow manage the processes, and not let management manage the flow. What it means that starting point of the flow should be customer orders. And customer orders, arrive to the last assembly process. From there on, this information by means of supermarket method or by means of Kanban, from the last stage go back to the previous process until it reaches the raw material stage. So he was looking at the total picture in the total flow that originates from customer orders, go through the raw material. But material movement it goes this way. So there are two flows. And to integrate the two flows, he came up with the idea of supermarket method and the Kanban system. And instead of the toying with the flow by managers, what he said, why don't we let the flow go through its course? That is what the customer wants, and you have how many number of units the customer wants, translated into the tack time on each unit, and going back all the way to the raw material stage. That is what he meant. Let the flow manage the processes, and not let management manage the flow. This saying has been written in no book so far. I overheard he was talking about it in his conversation with his friends. I think that's a very significant phrase. Let the flow manage the processes, and not let management manage the flow. So there's so many, the pieces of logistic checkpoints. If you want to look at, what was going on, I will simply mention them by name. Like like you have one-piece flow. There should be no isolated island, no conveyor, please. Visual management, standardization, Kanban, separation between man and machine. At Toyota, when they are talking about the productivity, it usually means per capita productivity, not machine productivity. Standard work, elimination of muda, murimura, production control board, 3 logistic principles, takt time, cycle time, 5S. These are all, the associated activities, logistic activities we have to take into account. And here are some common misconceptions by management. Like, there are 2 types of activities. One is proprietary technology and managerial technology. And I think in many Western companies, they take too much emphasis in this area and forget managerial technology, how to deal with people, how to deal with operations with common sense. And also sometimes top management thinks that if you set policy and the result will follow. You say, introduce lean. Then they think lean will be introduced. Then train employees and Gemba improves. If you give enough training, particularly give some handbooks to guys, then things will become better. It should be the manager's job to train the people, not somebody else. Rely on sophisticated tools instead of common sense. Believe Gemba will ask, what's in it for me? Well, once you involve your people and Kaizen has become the corporate culture, nobody will say, well, if we do that, how much will I get? It's like, running the some sports. So they engage in some kind of sporting events. And they say, if we engage in the sports, how much will I get? It's a lot of fun for them to engage in these activities. Quality is quality manager's job. Again, it should be the line manager's responsibility and everybody, responsibility. And efficiency is industrial engineer's job. Again, that should be line manager's job and also everybody's job. Everybody should be trained. Cost cutting, not cost management. I said it already. And also, Kaizen without focus and target, that's no good. You have to have a very clear, target to improve. Will be, the quality improvement or cost reduction or speed up the delivery. There has to be a very targeted, purpose for improvement. And then the main problem is that managers do not go to Gemba. Once I was visiting former Motorola's, plant. It has since been sold out, and another company bought it. And the new general manager was appointed to manage this plant. It is a huge, complex outlay of plant, making a printed circuit. So they have many small rooms, clean rooms, and with intricate entrance to go through the clean rooms. And this new manager told me when I visited them that, the first day he came here, this plant, and he asked the former, number two manager, and will you take me? I want to go through the plant. Then this manager didn't know how to get into the plant. Number 2 man didn't know how to get inside the plant. And he was fired right on the spot, I was told. But I'm afraid that's very much, could be close to, to what's happening. How often do the managers really go to Gemba and have a good look? At Toyota, Mr. Ono developed many of his disciples and sent him out to within Toyota's factories and to suppliers. Whenever they saw some problems and they have solved and reported to Mr. Ono, first his question is, did you go to Gemba? Did you really go to Gemba? That was his question. So, and the tools and problem. Today, I think we have too many tools available in the market. And that is one of the problems. Because managers think that, well, if we distribute these tools, they will learn it and they will apply it. So things will be better. Good example is Six Sigma. So, you train many black belt holders. What do? They go out into the field with the new tools they have acquired and say, hey, I can apply this tool here for now. But without really, specifying, what kind of tools do they start. And again, it is like a Christopher Columbus School of Management. You now have a tool, but you don't know where to go. So I believe that the most important thing is to have a clear idea. Where do we want to go? And to my way of thinking, going from Kaizen to Lean, and then Green will be the ultimate target for any organization in the whole world. This is too complicated map, so I wouldn't bother you with details. And there are many organizations which offer various certification programs, like a Deming Prize, PM Prize, or ISO, the certification, or single prize, Baldrige, and EFQM in Europe. And these are all various public certification programs. And maybe your companies may have obtained some of them. But I can tell you one thing, which are missing in all those cases, are the flow, synchronization, and leveling. No matter how closely you read these conditions for approval, they don't mention, do you have a flow? Are they synchronized? Are you practicing leveling? Of course, that's understandable because each of them have a very special, the items for which they provide certifications. But in order to really become a lean company, getting none of those prize will help you to go there. So if you really understand what TWI can do as a starting point and can show the way to the management, I think you'll be making a great contribution to the American industry. And in fact, of course, Japan learned a lot from the United States. Mr. Ono used to say that, many of the things we did came from America. I have learned about the Ford system while I was in the university. And we have learned industrial engineering technologies, quality control techniques, and we have learned a lot. So I think, I'm sure that this is the good time for you to well, to make it very clear, where you stand, where you want to go, and show it, to your let's say clients, that well, this is a way to reach the level of Kaizen, Lean, and Green. So with that phrase, I would like to finish my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Yes, sir.
We have a few moments if you have some questions for Mr. Imai. Take advantage of this unique opportunity to have somebody of his stature here with us. So who has some questions? We have a couple of microphones in back. We'd like to, we're recording this. We want to get it on tape, so use a microphone. Here we go.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you very much for your presentation. The last thing you were talking about, you said, are you practicing flow? Are you practicing synchronization? And I couldn't understand your third topic you said.
Okay.
Sounded like love, but I don't know.
Yes. The third one was leveling. Leveling. In Japanese, heijunka. Leveling. Simply stated, it means that, so you are receiving so many different orders from the customers, but, for one particular product line, and suppose it's been brought to this particular assembly line, then you start from the final assembly line. And based on the volume required, you establish, takt time. Like if you have to produce 1,000 units in 8 hours, takt time is 28 seconds. So this product, has to be. Suppose you have one-piece flow. So if it moves every process every 28 seconds, by the end of the 8 hour, you have produced 1,000 units. And in that way, each product, and depending on the order, of course, has a different takt time. And so once you know, how many units you have to produce and what is the required takt time, by combination, it gives you flexibility to deal with many different products. But suppose in your plant, you have a very lousy management. People are not even following the standard work. So which means that you have no takt time. Then do you think you can deal with such a case? No way. So in order to qualify as a working, the lean company, the minimum you have is to have standardized, let's say takt time, standardized work based on takt time. And of course, your people must be trained well enough to follow these procedures, without which nothing else will matter.
Mr. Imai, I want to thank you for your presentation. It was very, very refreshing. By the way, I was the person who said, I don't know, when you asked the question whether the plant manager knew the OEE. You started off by mentioning to us that you less than 1% of companies globally are practicing lean, and that you're writing a book to determine the root cause. Would you be able to share with us your thoughts on what possible root causes might be?
Thank you. The root cause go back to CEOs. And I have a theory that, within the company, the more you are promoted to the higher position, every time you are promoted to the higher position, you lose your common sense. And you become less and less out of touch with the outside world, not to speak of Gemba. And by the time you reach to the CEO's position, you become a complete idiot. That is a problem. And another reason is that, as of today, there is only one criteria to measure the performance of company or performance of top management, which is financial report. But financial report, by the time it is out, sometimes it's 1 year out, 1 year later. It doesn't reflect the current, real status. And also, because there are no other criteria, most people, in order to make judgment on the performance of CEOs, that is the only criteria. And so, thinking about why, the many CEOs have failed to introduce it, I came up with the reason. I finally came up with the reason. That is to say, there is no ongoing criteria to check the performance of the operational systems. For instance, who can blame, for GM for not having introduced Toyota Way? GM has every opportunity to learn through their NUMI experience and so on, but they didn't. And nobody is blaming the GM's top management. Why? Because there has been no, global criteria to measure the current level of production system. So I have set out to establish a new measure. And right now I'm writing my third Kaizen book. Probably the title will be FSL. FSL. Have you ever heard about FSL? Maybe not, because I coined those phrases. But you know it. You already know it. Because F means F-L-O-W. Flow. S means synchronization. And L means leveling. Heijunka, leveling. And I would say these three keywords are the real essence to dissect the lean production system. So I'm going to announce my way of, FSL certification or analogy, FSL analogy. That is the major thrust of my forthcoming book. Hopefully coming out sometime next year. I have been saying that I'm going to write a book since 10 years ago. But because I have so many requests, for my presence, including this one, and my schedule has been delayed. For this year, I told our people, don't get any more requests. But still, they couldn't, they couldn't reject the offer. I'm afraid my date will be delayed by 2 weeks. But anyway, I think the lack of criteria to compare, has been another very serious reason. And once we have such a criteria, I think things are going to change. For instance, the company has many stakeholders, you see. Some financial institutions and various fund, businesses, which have paid which have invested so much money. They can say to the company, hey, well, we have invested so much money, but how come you haven't started out introducing Lean? Ask Mr. Imai to come and check. Then I'll be too happy to do it, right?
Thank you for listening to Lean Frontiers Audio. For a complete list of Lean Frontiers events, including the Lean Accounting, Lean HR, TWI, and Lean Coaching Summits, please visit leanfrontiers.com.